Gordon about? Wait here. What is it?
Want to volunteer for work. Orderly duty.
You, the last of the blanket men. Couldn't stick being treated like a criminal. Now all of a sudden you want a skivvy?
My wife always said I was a dab hand with a map.
No way. Forget it.
Get many volunteers from our side, do you? I bet someone higher up would say it different, wouldn't they? Maybe I should ask them.
What fascinated you most about these two men?
That's a good question. I suppose, for my perspective, his drive to, I mean, it sounds like a basic answer, but his drive to escape and his drive, I suppose, to, in our story, to redeem himself in his own eyes and in terms of ways he felt maybe he let down his colleagues.
I think his side of the story and where he's coming from really interested me because it's not something I was hugely familiar with, nor do I think it's been portrayed very often. So it was great to be able to kind of represent that, I think. And given the nature of the work he does, he has a kind of a, very disciplined approach to his job. I thought that's always an interesting thing to dip into.
That's it. We're looking at a week today. If you give us a nod.
Sorry, lads, we can't.
You're joking. Why?
Ropes and ladders was never going to work here. I've second-guessed all of that. It spat you as soon as you stuck your head over a wall.
If you thought that all along, why didn't you say so before?
There's something else on. Yous do, don't you?
We're done here.
Oh, come on. You can't do that, Mick. We're all in the same team, lads.
And no means no, by the way.
Was this the most pressure that either of you have felt in terms of bringing a character to the screen?
I found pressure in terms of, I suppose, being from Dublin, not being from Belfast, pressure to be as informed as I could be about the subject and being able to talk about the film and be as educated about the conflict and also on a basic level, on a technical level, things like accents, things like physicality, making sure you were getting as close as you could to those. So it was huge pressure, and also because Ireland's a very small island and the conflict is still so present.
I didn't feel pressure at all, to be honest. I thought the script was so fair, balanced, and unbiased, and truthful in its attention to detail and the accuracy of the historical kind of facts. So the pressure was lifted.
He asked me to tell you that long before you two met, he saw you. You were working at a fair behind a stall. He said you didn't notice him and he was too chicken to go and talk to you. So he just watched you for a while. He said you were joking and smiling. And that he fell in love with you there and then. From that one look. That's it. That's all he wanted me to tell you.
He can still make me cry even from the grave. He always was a romantic agent.
I'm sorry. He was a good friend of mine.
For each of you, what does the film say about masculinity?
That's a really good question. We haven't had that. That's a brilliant question. Men confined together in a small space, in a heightened political, social environment, and intimacy being something that's important. I suppose what is amazing to me, and I think you've picked up on something really interesting, is about the visitors always being female, except for the son, but women coming into the mix, and it always being a slightly wake-up call to them and their masculinity and their that punk attitude that has often been male-orientated, I suppose. And that's a very long-winded answer. It's a great question, and it's a big answer.
Yeah, I think, and I hope I'm right in this, that the film shows, in our case, is a masculinity that's multifaceted and complex. And while you have us together in the prison itself, then you have the familial relations, and you see that side of both characters. So I think it deals with masculinity in its kind of in its complexity. It deals with it quite well, and not in any way a machismo kind of simplified way, you know.
Did you expect that you'd have to tell so much of it through the eyes?
We were concerned early on that there was a lot of that in the script, that the connection between the two of them was a lot in the eyes, and that might be misconstrued as an intimacy that was in some way sexual. And I mean, again, asking about masculinity and sexuality in prisons, that's always very fluid, again, because of a load of different things. And it's an amazing subject to discuss, and intimacy being a fluid thing. But again, the power of the script, the words coupled with these beats of us being very with the eyes, I thought was really potent.
That was kind of something of a challenge that I noticed at the beginning, because at the beginning it's very quiet, and you see Gordon at work, he's not communicating much, and to try and get that kind of presence and status across was without saying anything, for me was a real challenge at the beginning of the opening of the movie. But the uniform and truncheon help.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to reach everyone with it, no more than any movie would,
Yes.
whatever the genre, whether it's true or fiction. But what do you hope people take away from it?
Well, I think it's about a universality of conflict resolution, which can only be through dialogue and through people being in a room speaking, and intimacy and listening, and that's what I took from it.
And I think certainly if you're going to view it through a political prism, I think that's certainly the case. But I think first and foremost, it's a thriller, and it's got high intensity, and it's a prison breakout movie. So I think people will be entertained.
What have you got there?
Nothing.
Show me.
There's a shift change at 4 o'clock. One shot, that's all we've got.
Don't move. Don't make a sound.
Do you know something? Of all the warders, you picked me, didn't you?